re-record a presentation that I did. Sorry about that. A presentation I did a couple of weeks ago to an HR tech networking group. Um, I was asked to be involved in what they called a speed dating um, day, where presenters were asked to do a 15-minute presentation, pick a topic of your choice. And a lot of the presenters did a company pitch, and I decided to go down the path a little bit differently. And so what you're going to be seeing today is a presentation that I think is going to a concept that I think is going to change the way the VMS and MSPs, if you use an MSP, and how those programs are going to be changing. There hasn't really been a lot of variations in MSP offerings over the years. And this is one concept that's been done in full-time hire, but it hasn't really made its way into the contract labor world. And I believe that's what's going to be happening as these technologies continue to evolve. Excuse me. A little bit about me, if we haven't met. Most recently, the director of global sales for Vector. I've been in the VMS space for a long time. And if you take a look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that there's a couple of times where I've deviated from the VMS space, and that's all. Both times have been a result of a non-compete from the sale of a VMS company to another organization. So one of those times I got involved in labor market data, where we were scraping 5+ million jobs a month, and using that data, who's hiring, what they're hiring, what their rates are, into the VMS space, as well as to a number of other disciplines. I've been a speaker at industry conferences. I'm also, I guess, probably an odd component is my wife and I owned and taught a ballroom dance school for a number of years, and unfortunately, it was before Dancing with the Stars or any of these other dancing programs, but we really did have a fun time with that. And currently, really involved in the grandkids, sporting events, art events, dance, swim, etc., and really enjoying that. So that's a little bit about me. Let's get into the presentation that I did for this event. Historically, if you look at VMS and MSP companies, we've always focused on the hiring company. We haven't done a lot of focus on the staffing companies or the talent. And so in fact, the three pillars that we've professed since the late 90s are still being used by a lot of the VMS and MSP companies today. And those are, one is we want to manage rates. So if we have visibility into rates, we can then decide, who's doing the best job, which vendors are doing the best job, which managers are doing the best job, et cetera. So there's been a focus on rates. It's a mistake to have the 100% focus on rates only, because there's a lot more that can be managed, and as well, rate management doesn't necessarily mean a year-over-year reduction in rates, and we'll see that as a problem, particularly now when there's more jobs and talent. Another one of the focuses is on visibility. So not only can I see what I've spent, but I can see what I'm going to spend, what I've committed to spend, and again, which managers are doing the best, which staffing companies are doing the best. That's all very visible in these programs. And the third thing is a consistent process. So you know exactly how to find, how to procure talent, where to put the recs in. It's just a very consistent, who needs to do the approvals, et cetera. So those are the three pillars that we've always worked on. And if you think about it, every single one of those is focused on the hiring company. We don't particularly care about the staffing company's business, because in the end, if they can't fill the orders, we just get another staffing company. And there is some metrics that goes to the staffing organization, but it really hasn't been a lot of frontal focus. And talent, we don't worry about the talent at all. That sits on the other side of the staffing company, and we need to. And that's the point of this conversation. We very much need to. particularly since we're all chasing after the same talent and we're all trying to find the best talent. And how do we do that, right? How are we going to get after that talent? If you take a look at, this is a presentation I did a few weeks ago to one of the companies that's in this photograph. This is in Plano, Texas, and all of these companies use similar talent, and they're all going after the same people. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you become the brand of choice? And that really does resonate with the talent. With where do I want to work? What's the best place to work? What has the best culture? Where how am I going to do this? So that's the same thing for you. How do I connect with the talent and the right talent to fill the roles that I have? So how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Historically, as I mentioned, we just get more. If we can't find the right talent, we get another staffing company. And when I was at Vector, I was getting 3-4 emails a day saying, how do I get access to your jobs? And they're all going to tell you the same thing. It's just very consistent. I've got the best people at the best price available to you right now. So please give us access to the jobs. But here's the kind of the underbelly of that. Well, let me back up before we go there. What we do then, because of the mass amount of vendors out there, is we tier them. I was talking to a company recently. They had 300 contractors in average, and they've got 150 suppliers. Simple math says each supplier is basically getting 2 fills. It's not a very good way to leverage spend. So what we've done traditionally, and this has been really since the beginning, the last 20 years, we put the vendors into a tiering structure. The ones that perform the best, the one that gives us the best talent. We have metrics to see which vendors are doing the best, who's the most responsive, and we put them in a tier structure. The new entrance into the vendor group goes into tier 2, tier 3, etc., and they gradually will work their way into a tier 1 if they're performing correctly. This is traditional, and it's effective. It's a great way to manage the vendors. Here, as I was mentioning, here's kind of the underbelly of it. Once the staffing company gets access to the job, they decide which job they have the best chance to fill at the best price. So they're going to make a decision how to work with you, what talent they're going to present to you. If they have an option of presenting the talent to multiple companies, which is very common today, they're going to make a decision as to which one has the best chance of filling. The kind of the ironic part of it is the hiring company relies on the staffing company to represent them to the talent, and the talent is asking the staffing company to represent them to the hiring company. And so the staffing company kind of sits in the middle and messages it both ways. And that's something that if you are very confident that they're representing you properly, that's great. But really, the crux of it is we need the ability to represent. You need the ability to represent your company directly to the talent. And right now, the question is, who does represent you? Well, hopefully, the staffing company does the job for you, but you're putting it in somebody else's hands. So my recommendation is that you create another talent tier, or another tier that I'm calling talent tiering. It's a tier 0 concept, which says that the first tier that you're going to look at is that talent that you've acquired that has basically raised their hand to you saying, I want to work at your company. This is different than talent pooling in that we're actually managing those connections. We're managing, we're messaging them saying, here's some upcoming jobs. How are you doing? When are you when are you going to be available? There's a lot of messaging that's going on in there. This does end up strengthening your brand to the community in general because you are having that messaging. It's not the black hole, right? So that's really important. And you'll end up gaining this reputation that says, I need to work at that company. I want to go register directly with that company. And as soon as as soon as the opportunity becomes available, talent's immediately notified. It does a couple of things. It's going to decrease the time to fill, which is really, really important. And secondly, you don't really incur any recruiting fees, which means that your pricing goes down. Now it's not as significant; it doesn't go down to zero, right? Because they're not on your payroll, so there's still some nuance to that. And actually, that's what's making this interesting for the contract labor space. I've been looking at this now for the last couple of years, saying this is the right way to do it. It hasn't really gained any traction, and that's the reason for putting my tier 0 together. So in this case, who represents you to the talent? Well, you do, if you want to. This can be done directly if you're directly managing your contract labor program. It can be done through an MSP. I think there's a lot of functionality that's coming into play tech-wise that could be part of a VMS system down the road. But there's also outside tech that really does a great job because they're so focused on that direct connect concept. So the big question that I get all the time is, if I have a program in place already, why would my MSP be interested in offering an option to directly connect to talent, given that most of the MSP companies are owned by staffing companies? Aren't they really taking their revenues out of one hand and putting it in another? Well, there is a little bit of truth to that, but in the end, there's really one big reason to do this, and that is factually it increases the revenue of the MSP, and it does increase the revenue for the staffing company depending on how the program is structured. And that's something that I can certainly help you through. But it does give you access to a much higher revenue stream, in the same way that an MSP can see revenue from every engagement. So can a staffing company see revenue from engagements that happen through this direct connecting concept. I think I may have just made this more complicated than it is, because it's really very straightforward, and I'd be happy to talk through that with you. And on that note, here's a few ways to connect with me. You can call my cell phone directly. That's a 612 number. I have a Calendly account. If you want to just grab some time on my schedule, feel free. And also on LinkedIn, and all this information is in my LinkedIn profile. So that's another way that you can connect with me. I really think this concept is going to make a difference in the VMS or in the contract labor world. It's just a matter of getting a little traction, but I believe that it will. And so if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk it through. I appreciate the time. A little bit under 15 minutes, but that's okay. And I look forward to speaking with you.